Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
All right, Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City. Come experience the ultimate sports destinations all season long at the Wild Wild West Tropicana Harrah's Resort Atlantic City. Book your game day experience today at Caesars.com. I'm Mike Hill. This is the Sports Badge. Football at 4. We got Eagles and Bucs tonight. Jalen Hurts, obviously going to be a big factor in the game tonight. His production has been outstanding. Can production lead to victories? We'll find out more. We just got some news reporting from Derek Gunn that Dallas Goedert will not play in the game tonight, it seems. So let's bring Andrew DiCecco in from InsideTheBirds.com and get his thoughts on if that really affects the game plan or not, on how the Eagles go forward without Dallas Goedert. What are they losing, Andrew, with Goedert not in the offense tonight?
Well, they're losing a dynamic middle-of-the-field option that's going to work the short to intermediate routes, but also has the ability to threaten vertically against a very suspect Tampa Bay secondary. It's a big loss. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Zach Ertz, though, they have another good option, Zach Ertz, and there's obviously some familiarity there with Jalen Hurts. They have a good connection, and I expect Zach Ertz to be heavily utilized in the offense. But, I expect to see more Quez Watkins tonight in Goddard's absence.
It's funny, he's the guy that I brought up earlier, too, and I want to get your take on how they can better use Watkins, what kind of game plan can they put forth to get him more involved in the offense. He seems like the guy who's got the speed, got the explosion, and it looks like they want to find more creative ways to get him the ball. What can they do?
Well, you want to see something similar to the game plan for the Atlanta Falcons game, where getting him the ball around the line of scrimmage and letting him take advantage of his explosive ability in space. And that's the best way to get him the ball and let him sort of use his speed to make some big plays and turn out yards after the catch. He's always good for the shot play. I expect to see that at least once or twice tonight. But you want to get him the ball a little bit more on these intermediary routes, because I think he offers a lot more than how he's being utilized. I think he can affect all three levels of the field. I think he's a very proficient route runner, much more so than Jalen Reagor. So I think that he really should be utilized in another way other than the guy who runs deep and can take the top off of the secondary. I think he can bring a lot more to the offense.
Yeah, Andrew, I loved what they did with Watkins in the first game against Atlanta early in that game, and I really thought it meant they were going to set him up for something different. We haven't seen that yet. Like, they went early, right to him 3-4 times, bubble screen, and it felt like, hey, how about a fake bubble screen? I feel like you can use him in the seam a lot more. We haven't seen him really get involved in the jet sweep. I feel that the lack of creativity and accentuating the positives of their playmakers has really lacked since that opening game from Nick Sirianni.
Yeah, especially in Jalen Reagor, who I thought that this coaching staff would definitely find a way to maximize his skill set. Obviously, he was utilized very sparsely and curiously by the previous regime. He's best utilized at getting him the ball around the line of scrimmage and letting him, utilizing his short area quickness and explosive traits. They really haven't done that either. So I actually wrote about this in my scouting report on InsideTheBirds.com, that Jalen Reagor is my X factor because the running yards are going to be tough to come by this week. However, I could see them using the short passing game as an extension of that. And Jalen Reagor, if there's ever a game where you're going to utilize Jalen Reagor, it would be this week.
Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4. Obviously, the Eagles don't like to run the ball. This isn't a night that you would anticipate a lot of success running the ball, though, right? I mean, the Bucs front 7, even without Lavonte David being out of this game, there's not a lot of room to run in this game, correct?
Correct, but that also doesn't mean that they should abandon it altogether. You have to at least keep committing to it, showing a willingness to some semblance of a running game to keep the defense honest, and it'll eventually open things up later in the game.
All right, let's look at the pass, because obviously they do that a lot. They want to do it a lot, and they want to basically beat you in the air. This is a team that can be beaten in the air. Devonta Smith, obviously, you would think that he's going to have a lot of positive matchups here because there's so many injuries in that Buccaneers secondary. But is this a game where the Eagles should rely heavily on the pass?
I think they're going to do that anyway, but I mean, they need to mix in some runs, of course, and even if you're only getting 2-3 yards at a time, eventually something will pop, and the defense is, they're human. They're going to wear down just like any other defense will if you stay committed. But yes, I would expect to see a heavy dose of the passing game, leading with Devonta Smith, who I think is going to be a handful for Richard Sherman, who at 33 years old, he may have the length and the physicality, but he does not have the short area quickness, the long speed, or the fluidity to keep up with Devonta Smith. I would expect to see a lot of short passes for first down conversions to Devonta, and then possibly setting up a double move later in the game.
Yeah, I know that a lot of people have been talking about, as we did, Watkins and Rieger, but Smith is the guy that's been getting the volume of the catches here. So this is a game where you think that he can kind of get going. Now let's look at the Eagles' defense against this Buccaneers offense because, we talk about, hey, Darius Slay wants to play man. There's not really one guy. They've got three guys. So do you anticipate seeing Jonathan Gannon sitting in more zone this week?
Yes, absolutely. They're not going to do a whole lot of traveling this week. It's sort of a pick your poison of that wide receiving core. I mean, Antonio Brown went off last week for 124 yards and 2 touchdowns. Wouldn't surprise me. This feels like a Chris Godwin type of night for me. I think we'll see a lot of Steve Nelson on the other side. So, I mean, there's no use in traveling because all three of those guys can beat you in different ways. So I would expect to see a lot of zone tonight.
Andrew, last week, one of the big things that the Eagles excelled in was getting pressure and getting it from up the middle. Fletcher Cox had a sack. Javon Hargrave had a sack. Hargrave's been excellent. But the interior of the Buccaneers line is a different animal than it is the Carolina defensive line. So how can the Eagles get pressure against Tom Brady?
Yeah, the interior for Tampa is vastly compared to that of the Carolina Panthers. I mean, Ryan Jensen at center, Alex Kappa, the right guard, and Ali Marpet, the left guard, is just a very feisty, tenacious, stout unit that protects Tom Brady from interior penetration. But that said, the Eagles need to dial up pressure and at least be disruptive with their 2 defensive tackles and Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave if they want to stay in this game, because Tom Brady looks like a different quarterback, most quarterbacks do, when you get pressure in their face coming up the middle. He's not a nimble guy. He's not going to elude the pocket. So if you can move him off his spot and disrupt the timing with those 2 defensive tackles, you have a chance. You have a chance to get some stops there, and I think that's where the game will be won if the Eagles do win this game.
Hey, no Gronk. How does that affect the Buccaneers offense?
Well, he wasn't available last week, and they put up 45. So I don't think that it's a juggernaut offense, Mike. They have O.J. Howard, who was a very highly touted prospect coming out. He has not lived up to his billing, but he's capable. And they have they have the 2 running backs. I would expect to see a lot of Leonard Fournette tonight, in my opinion, much like you saw with Mike Davis when he got going in the first half of that Week 1 game. Sort of a similar build. I think he's a player that they're going to lean on, and he's a punishing runner, so you're going to see him wear down that second level of the Eagles. So I think that he could get him for 1 or 2 touchdowns tonight.
Hey, the Buccaneers, obviously, their starting DBs are down. You mentioned Sherman. So do they cover the pass aspect of the RPO? Are they going to be able to handle that, or is that an area where the Eagles can really try to confuse that secondary?
I think that they need to try that early on because that's a good point. I think that they could struggle because they're so undermanned there. So I think that if the Eagles want to try and get Jalen Hurts into a rhythm, that would be the route to go with, and then sort of build off of that and see what they're giving you, see what their looks are like.
Speaking of what they're giving you, like if you're Tampa Bay, are you telling your guys to force the handoff on the zone read in this game? In other words, don't let Jalen Hurts beat you.
I think that's – you saw what he was able to do in the latter stages of that game, and I think that they're going to protect against that. They have fast linebackers. I think outside linebacker coach Mike Caldwell, a former Eagles linebacker, and inside linebackers coach Larry Foote. Those guys have done a phenomenal job with that linebacking core for them, and I think they're both potential defensive coordinator candidates down the road. But they're coached up very well, so I would expect one of those guys to spy Jalen Hurts.
I think another interesting thing would be, on the Eagles defense, we know, Andrew, we saw them do it. They like to play the safeties back against the Chiefs. Can the linebackers be better this time? Can they hold Fournette? Can they hold the rushing attack to under 3 yards a carry and kind of force them into a one-dimensional team? And, obviously you take your chances like that. But the problem they had with Kansas City is that and Dallas, as a matter of fact, is that they could get you running and throwing the ball because you simply couldn't stop the run.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I don't know how much of an impact the linebackers are going to have tonight. Like I said, if Leonard Fournette gets to that second level, him and Ronald Jones are both bigger running backs, and they tend to pick up – they're volume runners. So they're going to continue to pound the rock with those guys. And I don't know that Alex Singleton or Davion Taylor or TJ Edwards or any of those guys are going to be able to withstand that over the full course of a game. So I think you might see something similar as far as the linebacker breakdown as you saw against the Chiefs, because the Chiefs really laid out the blueprint. So I would expect to see something similar in that regard.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how Jonathan Gannon, Andrew, has evolved as a defensive coordinator since that Chiefs game, since obviously it wasn't that long ago. So you're looking at really just 2 weeks of change to see if he'd learned anything from the way that the Chiefs kind of picked him apart and how he can kind of tighten the screws. And one of those methods might be is, does he make any personnel changes tonight on that defensive side of the ball?
I think you might see some more Davion Taylor. I think that he looked he showcased his speed and range, and when you have a lot of explosive weapons that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have, you need to have your athletic linebackers out there. I thought TJ Edwards might be a player that sees an uptick in snaps because of his run defense. So that's another player that I would look to see an increase in snaps, and you might see less of Eric Wilson.
In this game on a Thursday night, Andrew, do you think the Eagles are in a good spot here for an upset? Does this feel like, hey, if you're going to get them, it's on a Thursday night, short week, Eagles coming off of a win. Tampa Bay is coming off of a easy win over Miami, and they've got a lot of injuries. Do you like this spot? I'm not saying that you're saying they're going to upset them, but do you like this as the best opportunity?
Hang on one second, Mike. I'm just driving wrong.
Yeah, Andrew DiCecco with us here, Football at 4, and of course in the car, so we're going to make sure he doesn't get into any sort of accident here as we get ready for the Eagles and the Buccaneers tonight. We'll get his thoughts on that. I kind of talked about this earlier, is that we talked about this with Joe Valerio. I thought Joe told such a great story yesterday in that it was a great opportunity. They looked at it as such a challenge. The Eagles, I feel like, are a team that they kind of understand that most people don't think very highly of them, that they think they're this team that's on, and I'm looking at NFL Live right now here at Chickies and Pete's, and on the screen, they're talking about the Eagles draft picks. Why are they talking about the draft picks? Well, here's a team that's 2-3, firmly in the wild card mix right now, and people are looking at their draft capital and their draft status for next season. It kind of says that, hey, we don't really think much of you this season, but we like where you sit for the future. And they have a situation in the future where they've got all these picks coming up. They have, the Miami pick, and right now the Dolphins are 1-4 in my ugly 5. They also have the Colts pick, which is 1-4. So I was asking you, Andrew, is this a good spot? I'm not saying that you're calling for an upset, but is this the best spot you're going to get Tampa Bay? When you look at a schedule, it's a lot about when you get a team, where you get them, at what point of the season, what happens around them. So if you're playing Tampa, is on a Thursday night right now, coming off of a win for Philly, coming off of a blowout win for Tampa Bay, does this feel like a good spot for the Eagles to maybe pull off a surprise?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the best opportunity they're going to have. Do I think it's going to happen? Probably not, but I would expect this to be a lot closer contest than many expect. Coming off a short week, you have Tom Brady, who has banged up thumb. You're missing Levante David, Antoine Winfield, two, prominent premier defensive players for that team, the heart and soul of that defense. I think the Eagles are going to come out with a more tactical, sound approach and a plan of attack. I think they're going to build off of that energy from last week. But I also know that Tom Brady, that loss to the Super Bowl is going to be, weighing heavily on him, and I would expect him to keep his foot on the gas this week and definitely play up to this, it's a primetime matchup. I think it's going to be a closely contested, a close contest, but I would expect Tampa Bay to pull this one out. But I think that the Eagles are in a decent spot to pull off an upset if they avoid costly mistakes and those penalties that have plagued the team through the first portion of the season.
Yeah, I know you just said something we haven't touched on, the penalties. And that's something that realistically, Andrew, has been in the way of almost every single game they've played this year. In fact, there hasn't been a game where there hasn't been a major penalty that has kind of factored into how that game has kind of went. Can't have that tonight. I want to get your opinion on 44-year-old Tom Brady and just how of a marvel he is, the fact that he's still going and still playing at the level he is, and the fact that, as Sal Paolantonio told us earlier, they're still game planning around a 44-year-old quarterback heavily. I mean, they're still leaning on him. This offense, when you watch the Buccaneers offense, they still lean on him heavily.
Yeah, it's remarkable, and the fire still burns within Tom Brady. He's, one of the most competitive athletes I've seen. You can compare him to Michael Jordan in that regard. He just has that desire to keep playing and keep winning, and to the fact that you're game planning for a 44-year-old quarterback, and he's still playing at a high level. He has 16 touchdown passes, Mike, through 5 games. That's remarkable, and it's hard to really anticipate or pinpoint when the last season for Tom Brady will be. Now, do I think that this is the last time that Tom Brady will play in Philadelphia? Probably, but I still think he has at least 2 years left of, top level production.
I agree. Is that, we were talking about this the other day. Here's a guy 44. When you saw Peyton Manning at the end, you knew it was the end. You're not watching a guy who's at the end right now. You feel like this guy can still keep going. So how many more can he do? I don't know, but I agree with you. We might never see him in Philadelphia again, so tonight could be a treat. We'll see it all happen right here, or we'll listen to it all happen right here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, Andrew, your pick is?
I'm going with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Like I said, I think the Eagles are going to come out with a much more sound approach than they had last week. I don't really know what last week's game plan was or what the plan of attack really was, but Tampa Bay is just a high-powered machine. It's going to be very tough to stop them. I like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to win this game 37-23.
All right, there's Andrew DiCecco, InsideTheBirds.com, for all of the coverage for the Eagles and the Bucs. He's got a full scouting report up right now that you can check out at InsideTheBirds.com. And, of course, Football at 4 tomorrow with Adam Kaplan recapping the whole kit and caboodle here on Football at 4. Andrew, enjoy the game tonight, man.
All right, Mike, you as well. Talk to you soon.
Andrew's back on Tuesday for more on the Eagles. Next week, they will get ready for the Las Vegas Raiders.